Questions. My dear friends, have you ever noticed sometimes people don't realize your value until you stop showing up, until your good morning doesn't pop up on their phone? Questions. Until your helping hand doesn't reach out first, until your smile isn't the first thing they see every day. They say, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Questions. But I say, only if your presence made it worth missing. Today, let's talk about a very powerful lesson. Let them feel your absence. When you're always around, always available. Questions. If people start taking you for granted, it's like background music. It's there, but no one's really listening. If your presence doesn't add value, your absence won't make any difference. Questions. So don't just exist in people's lives, enrich them. Gold is precious not because it's shiny, but because it's rare. When you give everyone your time, your energy, questions, your emotions freely, constantly, you become common, not valuable. Learn to say no. Because every yes you say to others is a no you say to yourself. Silence is not empty. Questions. My friends, it's full of answers. When you stop explaining, stop chasing, stop proving, people suddenly start wondering, what happened? And sometimes, questions. Your silence will make more noise than your words ever could. You can't keep giving life to relationships that don't water you back. If someone only notices you when you're gone, questions. Maybe they never truly saw you when you were there. Don't beg to be seen. Be so valuable that your absence shakes their comfort. Letting them feel your absence doesn't mean revenge. Questions. It means recalibration. Take a step back to heal, to grow, to refocus. Remember, even your phone needs charging. So does your soul. When you step back, questions. You see things you couldn't when you were too close. Sometimes people only understand your worth when they see what life looks like without you in it. That's not ego. That's education. Questions. You are not a like, a replay, or a seen tick on someone's chat. Your value doesn't depend on who notices you. It depends on who you become when no one's watching. Questions. Invest in your growth, your peace, your purpose, not in proving yourself. If your presence is not respected, your absence will be celebrated. So before it reaches that stage, walk away gracefully. Questions. You owe peace to yourself more than attention to others. Let your presence bring peace, not pressure. Let people remember you for your kindness, not your complaints. If your presence was a blessing, questions, your absence will be felt deeply. Don't rush back into the same spaces that drained you. Let your return be like the sunrise, bright, new, and undeniable. Questions. People will value your light more after they've experienced the dark. My friends, never be afraid to step back, because your absence is not a weakness, it's a mirror. Questions. It shows who truly cares, it shows who truly notices, and most importantly, it shows you what you deserve. Let them feel your absence, not to make them suffer, but to make them see. Questions. And when they finally do, they'll realize that your silence was louder than 1,000 words, your absence was heavier than your presence ever was, and your comeback will be unstoppable. Questions. My dear friends, in this fast-paced world, we are always present somewhere, physically, digitally, or emotionally. Questions. But have you ever stopped and asked yourself, is my presence making a difference? Or am I just there? You see, being present is easy, but being purposefully present, that's rare. Questions. Let me share a small story. Once a young man came to a monk and said, I feel invisible in my own home. My parents don't listen to me. My friends barely care. I'm there with everyone. Questions. But no one seems to notice me. The monk smiled and replied, my child, light a candle and put it under the sun. Does it shine? The young man said, no. Questions. Because there's already too much light. The monk then said, exactly. Sometimes your presence is not noticed because the place is already too bright. Not because you don't shine, questions, but because you're shining in the wrong space. Go where your light can make a difference. That, my friends, is the essence of presence with purpose. Questions. When you're everywhere, available to everyone, every time, for everything, people start to take you for granted. You become like background music. It plays all day long. Questions. And people get so used to it that they don't even notice it anymore. But the moment it stops, suddenly there's silence, and that silence feels strange. That's how life works too. Questions. Your consistent presence without clear purpose becomes background noise. Pleasant, maybe, but unnoticed. Think about your daily life. You might be the person who always checks on your friends first. Questions. The one who says good morning in every group chat. The one who stays up late helping someone who barely says thank you. You keep showing up because you care. But over time, questions. Your caring becomes expected, not appreciated. It's like pouring water into a cup with holes. No matter how much you give, it never fills up. And then one day, when you stop calling, stop texting, questions, stop running after people, they suddenly say, you've changed. No, my friend, you didn't change. You just stopped being noise in someone's life and started being a voice in your own. Questions. Presence without purpose drains your energy, your emotions, and your spirit. Have you ever attended a meeting that could have been an email? You sit there, you smile, you nod, but deep down, questions. You know your presence isn't required. That's exactly how we waste emotional energy in our relationships too. We show up in places, conversations, and lives where our value isn't recognized. Questions. Being available 24/7 doesn't make you loyal. It often makes you invisible because people stop valuing what they always have. So, what's the solution? Make your presence purposeful. Questions. When you meet someone, bring joy, not judgment. When you speak, offer wisdom, not noise. When you spend time with others, give them your attention, not just your attendance. Questions. There's a difference between being around and being there. You can sit beside someone for hours and still feel miles apart. And you can talk to someone for 5 minutes and feel deeply connected. Questions. That's the magic of purposeful presence. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine two friends, Ravi and Arjun. Ravi calls every day, complains, gossips, and fills time with meaningless chatter. Questions. Arjun, on the other hand, calls once a week but always asks, how are you really doing? He listens, he encourages, and he brings clarity. Now tell me, questions. Whose presence do you look forward to? The one who's always around or the one who's truly there? That's the power of purpose. If your presence adds peace, laughter, inspiration, or support, questions, then your absence will matter. But if your presence only adds noise, drama, or dependency, your absence might actually bring relief. So don't aim to be present everywhere. Questions. Aim to be impactful somewhere. Even in your workplace, you don't have to speak in every meeting to prove you're engaged. Sometimes the most powerful presence is the one that listens, observes, questions, and speaks only when words can add value. And in relationships, don't show up just because you're afraid of losing people. Show up because you have something meaningful to give. Questions. Because when your presence is driven by fear, it's exhausting. But when it's driven by purpose, it's empowering. The difference between noise and music is rhythm, my friends. Questions. Noise is random, it fills space but serves no purpose. Music is intentional, it touches hearts, heals minds, and stays in memory. Questions. Be like music in people's lives, not noise in their background. When you live this way, questions. People won't just remember that you were there. They'll remember how you made them feel when you were. And here's the secret. Once you learn to make your presence purposeful, questions, your absence becomes powerful. Because when you step away for a while, people will not just miss your body. They'll miss your energy, your kindness, your value. Questions. Your presence should never feel like a burden, it should feel like a blessing. So, before you walk into any room, any conversation, or any relationship, ask yourself, am I entering as noise, questions, or as value? If your presence doesn't add peace, stay silent. If your presence doesn't inspire, step back and reflect. If your presence doesn't uplift others, work on yourself until it does. Questions. Because true presence is not about being seen, it's about being felt. And when people feel your presence, when your words, your actions, questions, your kindness make a difference, then even when you're gone, your impact stays behind. Questions. That is how you turn your presence from ordinary to extraordinary, from background noise to meaningful music, from being someone's habit to being someone's inspiration. So, my dear friends, questions. Let your presence be a blessing, not a background sound. Be the kind of person who walks into a room and makes it brighter. And when you walk out, questions, people feel that something precious has gone missing. Because presence without purpose is noise, but presence with purpose is power. Questions. My dear friends, have you ever wondered why diamonds are more valuable than stones, even though both come from the same earth? It's not just because diamonds shine. It's because they are rare. Questions. Anything that is easily available loses its worth. And this isn't only true for materials. It's true for people, time and attention. In life, questions. The more freely we give ourselves away, our energy, our emotions, our efforts, the less people value them. Think about it. When you're always available for someone, always saying yes, questions, always showing up the moment they call, they stop seeing your effort as a gift. They start seeing it as a given. Let's take a simple example. Imagine you love a particular food. Say, questions, your favorite chocolate cake. The first time you eat it, it feels heavenly. You take every bite slowly, savoring it, appreciating the taste. But what if you had the same cake every single day? Questions. For breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Eventually you'd get tired of it. You'd even start avoiding it. It's not that the cake lost its sweetness, it's that it lost its rarity. Now, questions. Apply that same principle to your presence in people's lives. When you're constantly available, replying instantly, always agreeing, never saying no, people stop appreciating your efforts. Questions. You've become that chocolate cake that's always on the table. Sweet, yes, but ordinary now. The value of your presence, my friends, grows when it's paired with boundaries. Questions. Say no doesn't make you arrogant, it makes you aware. A no is not rejection, it's reflection. It says, I respect my time, my energy, questions, and I know where to invest it, pa. There's a beautiful story of a wise teacher who once told his student, if you want to know your worth, questions, take this stone and try to sell it. The student went to the marketplace. The first vendor said, I'll give you $10. The student didn't sell it and went to a jeweler. Questions. The jeweler examined it under a light and said, this is no ordinary stone. It's a rare gem. I'll pay you $10,000. The student was shocked. When he returned, questions, the teacher smiled and said, you see, your value depends on where you place yourself. Some people see you as a stone, others as a gem. Questions. The secret is, don't stay where you're treated like a stone. Many of us keep placing ourselves in spaces where our value isn't recognized. We give and give, questions, hoping others will see our worth. But how can they when we don't respect it ourselves? We think being available means being caring. Being always ready means being loving. Questions. Being always agreeable means being kind. But no, sometimes being unavailable is the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for others. Because your absence creates space for appreciation. Questions. Think about a mother who is always at her family's service, cooking, cleaning, organizing, supporting, day in and day out. Everyone gets used to it. It becomes normal. Questions. But the day she falls sick or goes away for a few days, suddenly the house feels incomplete. Everyone realizes how much she actually did. Questions. That realization came not because she did more, but because she was missing. Rarity, my friends, doesn't mean you hide from the world. It means you choose when and where to give your time, questions, your energy and your emotions. It means you give yourself the dignity of choice. Even in your professional life, if you're the person who always says yes to every request, every extra task, questions, every demand, soon people won't see it as kindness, but as obligation. But when you say yes selectively, when your yes is meaningful and well-timed, it carries weight. Questions. Your value increases because your contribution is measured, not mindless. And in relationships, it's even more delicate. When you stop chasing, when you stop begging for attention, questions, when you stop being overly available, something magical happens. People start missing you. They start realizing what you brought to their lives. Your laughter, your patience, questions, your love, they begin to see it with new eyes. You see, absence teaches appreciation, but only when presence was precious. When you're rare, people pause to notice you. Questions. When you're everywhere, people stop seeing you. That's the paradox of value. So, how do you make yourself rare without becoming distant? It's simple, by being intentional. Questions. Don't give everyone access to your time. Don't explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Don't keep showing up where you're ignored. Because your time is your treasure. Questions. Your energy is your currency, and your presence is your privilege. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to it. In the digital age, questions, we've become addicted to instant everything. Instant food, instant replies, instant gratification. But true value takes time. Relationships, trust, questions, respect, they grow when space and silence allow appreciation to take root. Imagine if the sun never set. We'd never appreciate the stars. The night is what makes the day special. Similarly, questions, a little distance, a little space, a little no, makes your high yes shine brighter. So, my dear friends, stop measuring your worth by how often people need you. Questions. Start measuring it by how deeply they value you. Because the truth is, people don't respect what's always available, they respect what's earned. Be like a book worth rereading. Questions. Not a billboard everyone passes by daily without noticing. Be like rain after a long drought, not the tap that runs endlessly. Questions. Be like a melody that plays once in a while, because that's when hearts wait to hear it again. You are not meant to be common. You are meant to be valuable. Questions. And your value shines through not in how often you appear, but in how deeply you are missed when you don't. So let your presence be selective, your efforts intentional, and your boundaries firm. Questions. Because when your life, your time, and your love become rare, they also become respected. Remember, value doesn't come from being always there. It comes from being worth waiting for. Questions. My dear friends, we live in a world that never stops talking. Our phones buzz, our notifications blink, our minds race. And in this endless noise, silence has become a stranger. Questions. But let me tell you something. Silence is not emptiness, it is power. Silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any words ever could. Questions. There comes a time in everyone's life when words stop working. You explain, you argue, you justify, and still you are misunderstood. You give long speeches, you defend your heart, and questions. No one really listens. That is when silence becomes your best response. Because silence doesn't need to prove, it simply shows. Imagine this. You are in a heated argument with a friend. Questions. You're right and you know it. But the more you talk, the more the conversation turns bitter. Finally, you take a deep breath and choose to stay silent. That silence, my friends, questions, isn't surrender. It's strength. Because sometimes walking away with peace is more powerful than staying with pride. Silence has a way of revealing truths that words can hide. Questions. When you stop explaining, people start reflecting. When you stop reacting, they start noticing. Your silence becomes a mirror. It shows others who they truly are. Let me tell you a small story. Questions. Once, a student asked his spiritual teacher, "Master, why don't you ever argue with people who misunderstand you?" The master smiled and said, "When the wind blows." Questions. Do you start shouting at it to stop? No, you wait for it to pass. The student was confused. The master continued, "Because silence calms what noise cannot." That is the beauty of silence. Questions. It doesn't fight, it transforms. It doesn't scream, it shifts the energy. In our daily lives, we often use words like weapons. We speak without thinking, we react without pausing. Questions. And then we regret what we said in the heat of the moment. But when we learn to pause, to allow silence to take the lead, we give ourselves time to understand rather than just respond. Questions. Think about when you're angry. In anger, your tongue is faster than your mind. But silence, in that moment, is like a shield. It protects you from saying what you'll later wish you hadn't. Questions. Sometimes your silence is not for others, it's for your own peace. Even in relationships, silence can be a healer. There are moments when the best way to love someone is not by speaking. Questions, but by listening. When a friend is in pain, they don't need your advice immediately, they need your presence, your quiet understanding. Questions. That's why silence is not always the absence of communication. It's the highest form of it. A mother doesn't need to speak to comfort her crying child. Her embrace, her silent warmth. Questions is enough. A true friend doesn't always say, "I understand." Sometimes they just sit beside you quietly, and in that silence you feel understood. Questions. That's the power of silent connection, a language beyond words. But silence is not only about others, it's also about you. In silence, you hear your own heart. Questions. You discover what your inner voice has been trying to tell you all along. We keep searching for answers from people, books, and screens, but the truth is, the answers were always inside us. Questions. We just never gave them a chance to speak. When you sit alone, away from noise, when you stop scrolling, stop speaking, and just breathe, you meet yourself. Questions. That inner meeting is the beginning of clarity. Remember, this silence is not about shutting out the world, it's about tuning into your own frequency. Questions. It's about realizing that peace doesn't come from having the right words, it comes from having the right understanding. Let's take an everyday example. Questions. Have you noticed how musicians pause between notes? Those pauses, that silence, are what make the music beautiful. Without silence, even music becomes noise. In the same way, questions. Without pauses in our lives, our thoughts become cluttered, our words become empty, and our actions lose depth. Silence gives meaning to your presence. It gives weight to your words. Questions. People start listening to you differently when they know you don't speak unnecessarily. Because the quieter you become, the more powerful your message becomes. Questions. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, your calmness becomes your distinction. Your silence becomes your strength. There's a quote that says, "Questions. Never waste your words on people who deserve your silence." And it's true. Not every situation needs a reaction. Not every insult needs a reply. Questions. Not every misunderstanding deserves an explanation. When you choose silence in such moments, you are not losing the battle. You are rising above it. Even nature teaches us this. Questions. The ocean is loud at the surface, but calm and silent in its depths. The deeper you go, the quieter it becomes. Likewise, the deeper a person grows in wisdom, the more silent they become. Silence teaches patience. Silence teaches observation. Silence teaches control. It is in silence that great minds think, great hearts heal, and great souls grow. So, my dear friends, questions. The next time you feel the urge to argue, pause. The next time you're misunderstood, stay calm. The next time you're hurt, don't rush to react. Let your silence speak for you. Questions. Because your silence will say, I've grown beyond the need to prove. It will say, my peace is more valuable than your opinion. And one day, questions, the same people who questioned your silence will come to respect it. They'll realize that your quietness wasn't weakness. It was your way of saying, I choose peace over chaos. Remember, questions. Silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means what you have to say is far too valuable to be wasted on noise. So, let silence be your language of strength, your weapon of wisdom, questions, and your shield of serenity. Because when words fail, silence will still speak. And when it speaks, the world listens. Questions. My dear friends, life is like a garden, full of relationships, dreams, and emotions. Some of these grow beautifully and fill our lives with color and fragrance. But some questions, no matter how much you water them, just don't bloom. And yet, we keep pouring our time, our love, and our energy into them, hoping one day they'll turn green again. But sometimes, questions, you have to accept the truth. No matter how much care you give, a dead plant won't come back to life. Stop watering dead plants. These words may sound harsh, but they carry deep wisdom. Questions. They're not about giving up, they're about growing up. Think about this. Have you ever been in a friendship where you were always the one calling, texting, questions, checking in, and when you stopped for a while, the silence was deafening? That's when you realize you weren't in a friendship. You were maintaining a connection all by yourself. Questions. You were watering a plant that had already withered long ago. We do this often. In relationships, jobs, even habits, we hold on to what's familiar because it feels comfortable. Questions. We keep giving chances, making excuses, and hoping that maybe this time things will change. But in doing so, we forget to ask ourselves, what about the energy we're losing in the process? Questions. There's a difference between nurturing something that's growing and clinging to something that's already dead. A plant that's dying will respond to care. New leaves might sprout, questions, a little color might return. But a plant that's truly dead, you can pour all the water in the world, but nothing will change. In fact, questions, the only thing you'll do is waste water and energy that could have helped another plant grow. In the same way, we keep investing ourselves in people and situations that don't invest back. Questions. We stay in toxic friendships, draining jobs, and one-sided relationships, convincing ourselves that things will get better. But sometimes, questions, the best thing you can do is step back and stop watering. Let me share a small story. A woman once loved her garden dearly. Every morning, she watered all her plants. The green ones, the dry ones, questions, even the ones that had completely wilted. Her neighbor, seeing this, asked, "Why are you watering that one? It's already dead." The woman smiled sadly and said, "Questions, because I still have hope." A few weeks later, she realized that while she was wasting time on the dead one, the healthy ones were drying out because they weren't getting enough attention. Questions. That day, she finally pulled out the dead plant and started caring for the ones still alive. Within days, her garden flourished again. And that's what happens in our lives too. Questions. When we stop wasting time on what's gone, what's not working, and who's not growing with us, we start to bloom again. You see, life gives us limited energy each day, like a bucket of water. Questions. You can choose to pour it into dead situations that will never change, or you can use it to nurture your dreams, your peace, and your happiness. The choice is yours. Some of us are natural givers. Questions. We keep giving love, forgiveness, patience, and support even when the other person gives nothing back. We say, questions, maybe they'll change, Maybe they're just going through something, or maybe I just need to try harder. But my friend questions. If you have to beg for basic respect or constant acknowledgement, that's not love. That's emotional exhaustion. You cannot save people who do not want to be saved. Questions. You cannot heal people who are comfortable with their wounds. You cannot grow flowers in soil that refuses to hold roots. And sometimes the hardest part of love is realizing when to walk away. Questions. Stopping doesn't mean you never cared. It simply means you've cared enough. It means you're choosing to protect your peace over your pain. You're choosing growth over guilt. Questions. You're choosing to water plants that still have life. Your dreams, your purpose, your self-respect. Think about it. When we keep watering something dead, we don't just lose water. Questions. We also lose hope. We start blaming ourselves. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I didn't try enough. But that's not true. You can't fix what refuses to grow. Questions. You can't heal others by hurting yourself, even in your professional life. Maybe it's that job that drains you daily. You keep showing up, doing your best, sacrificing your health, your joy, questions, and your family time. But deep down, you know it's not feeding your growth anymore. That's a dead plant. And you deserve better soil. The same goes for dreams too. Sometimes questions. Certain goals no longer align with who you've become. But because you've invested time or effort, you keep chasing them even when your heart has moved on. Letting go doesn't mean failure. Questions. It means making space for new growth. Look at nature. When a tree sheds its dead leaves, it's not dying. It's preparing for new ones to grow. In the same way, questions. When you let go of what's no longer serving you, you're not losing. You're renewing. So stop watering dead plants. Not because you've stopped loving questions, but because you've started understanding. Understand that some people come into your life to teach you, not to stay. Understand that some chapters must close for the next one to begin. Questions. Understand that your peace is too precious to be poured into people who thrive on chaos. Forgive but move on. Care but from a distance. Love but with boundaries. Because at the end of the day, questions. Your life is your garden, and only you can choose what grows in it. Don't let dead things steal the light meant for new ones. One day, questions. You'll look back and realize that the moment you stopped watering the wrong things, your own growth began. So, my dear friends, take a walk through the garden of your life. Questions. Look closely at the plants you've been watering. Which ones are blooming? Which ones are lifeless? And then, with courage, with compassion, with clarity, stop watering the dead ones. Questions. Because when you do, you'll find that your garden, your heart, your purpose, your spirit will finally have room to bloom again. Questions. My dear friends, there comes a point in life when you have to take a step back. Not because you've given up, not because you're angry. Questions. And not because you want to make anyone feel bad, but because you need to breathe, to think, and to find yourself again. That's what it means to withdraw, to reflect, not to punish. Questions. In today's world, withdrawal is often misunderstood. The moment you go silent, people assume you're upset or trying to ignore them. But in reality, questions. Sometimes silence isn't distance. It's discipline. It's choosing peace over noise, clarity over chaos, and growth over reaction. Let me share a story. Questions. A young woman once came to her spiritual teacher saying, "I'm tired. I give my best to everyone. My family, my friends, my work, but no one seems to notice. Questions. I feel invisible." The teacher smiled and said, "Come with me." He took her to a river and asked her to hold a glass of water at arm's length. After a few minutes, her arm began to tremble. Questions. The teacher asked, "Is the glass heavy?" She said, "Not really, but the longer I hold it, the heavier it feels." The teacher nodded and said, "Exactly. Sometimes," questions, You're not tired because of the weight itself, but because you've been holding it for too long. Questions. It's okay to put the glass down for a while. That's what reflection does. It allows you to put the glass down. When you withdraw to reflect, you're not running away. You're resetting. Questions. You're giving yourself the space to look at your life from the outside, to understand what's working and what's not, to heal from what's hurting, and to strengthen what's helping. Questions. But here's the problem: many people fear withdrawal because they think it looks like weakness. Society tells us to keep hustling, keep pushing. Questions. Keep showing up, but no one tells us how important it is to pause. Yet, even the strongest machines need to rest, even the brightest lights need to recharge. Questions. And even the most loving hearts need a break. Think about your phone. When the battery is low, you don't throw it away. You charge it. But when you feel drained, you still try to push through. Questions, pretending everything's fine. And then one day you burn out, physically, emotionally, spiritually. That's why withdrawal is not selfishness, it's self-care. In daily life. Questions. Reflection looks simple. Maybe it's taking a walk alone, journaling your thoughts, or sitting quietly by yourself. But what happens inside is profound. You start to see your patterns. Questions. You realize where your energy is going, who's lifting you, and who's draining you. You begin to hear the whispers of your soul that were drowned out by the noise of the world. Questions. And here's the beauty of it. When you withdraw to reflect, you often come back stronger. Just like an archer pulls the arrow back before it shoots forward. Questions. Sometimes life pulls you back so you can aim better. People might not understand your withdrawal at first. They might think you've changed or become distant. But that's okay. Questions. You don't need to explain your healing process to anyone who caused the pain. Those who truly care will respect your space. Those who don't were never meant to stay. Questions. It's important to understand the difference between withdrawing to reflect and withdrawing to punish. When you withdraw with anger, your silence becomes a wall. But when you withdraw with awareness. Questions. Your silence becomes a mirror. One isolates you, the other enlightens you. For example, imagine two friends have a misunderstanding. One stops talking out of ego to make the other feel guilty. Questions. The other steps back to cool down and think clearly. The first is punishing, the second is reflecting. Only one of them will grow from it. Reflection is an act of maturity. It's saying, questions. Before I speak, let me understand. Before I react, let me think. Before I continue, let me evaluate. That simple pause can save relationships, decisions, and even your peace of mind. Questions. Even in nature, withdrawal is necessary. The sun sets every evening, not because it's tired of shining, but because the world needs darkness to rest. The tide pulls back, not to abandon the shore. Questions, but to gather strength for its next wave. The seasons change. Trees shed their leaves, not because they've given up, but to make space for new growth. Your life is no different. Questions. You are not meant to give endlessly without rest. You are not meant to be available every moment. You are not meant to solve everyone's problems while ignoring your own. Questions. Taking time away is not neglect, it's nourishment. Maybe you've been there, constantly trying to fix things, holding everyone else together while you fall apart inside. Questions. You laugh on the outside, but your soul feels tired. You try to keep peace with others while losing peace within yourself. That's the moment to step back. Questions. That's when you need to withdraw, not to teach others a lesson, but to remind yourself of one you matter too. And when you return after reflecting, something magical happens. Questions. You don't return bitter, you return better. You don't speak to argue, you speak to understand. You don't act out of frustration, you act from clarity. Your energy changes. Questions. Your perspective deepens and your presence becomes more peaceful. So don't let anyone make you feel guilty for choosing silence or distance. You're not abandoning anyone. Questions. You're protecting your peace. You're recharging your spirit so that when you give again, you give from abundance, not emptiness. The world glorifies constant activity. Questions. But wisdom teaches us the beauty of stillness. It's in stillness that rivers reflect the sky clearly. It's in stillness that your heart reflects the truth. So, my dear friends, take that pause. Questions. Withdraw when needed. Spend time alone, not to escape life, but to return to it with purpose. Because reflection is not about isolation. It's about illumination. Questions. You don't lose people by reflecting. You lose confusion. You don't lose time by resting. You gain clarity. You don't lose progress by pausing. You gain direction. Questions. Remember this. The best version of you doesn't come from constant motion. It comes from conscious reflection. So step back, breathe, and let silence heal what noise cannot. Because sometimes, questions, the best way to move forward is by stepping back first.